Much.
Poor man, Dr. Phil, talk to me.
Man, I'm doing all right. I had to make sure I wasn't muted. I was just trying to, work some things with this stream. Yeah, you've been teaching, and I'm trying to gather it, and I know you had to do the description and everything.
Hey man, you got it, man. You got it, brother.
Yeah,
Listen, I
come
want
on.
to I want to give a shout out to my brother, Chris. He's a little under the weather right now, so brother, get well. Your presence is definitely missed tonight, and we look forward to seeing you with us next week. Um, for everybody else, listen, welcome to this evening's show. Again, if this is your first time joining us, it is a pleasure to have you with us. Again, we know you can be anyplace else on this beautiful Friday evening, but you chose to be with us, and we do not take that lightly. So, look in the bottom right hand of your screen, find a little icon and put your cursor over and click on that. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel and share it with somebody else, somebody who you think that can find value in the conversations that we have. Also, to the people in the chat, man, listen, you guys are always, it's always good to see you guys. Welcome, Cassandra McKenzie, Lisa Keys, Bernadette Simmons, Rhonda Cyrus, Nikisha Izzard, Michelle Ray, Miss Charlotte Jordan, Queen V. Good to see you guys, man. As always, welcome to the show. Bernadette Stevens, where I get Stevens from? Bernadette Simmons, thank you. Thank you. We greatly appreciate that. And again, shout out to all of our super supporters, man. We value you so much, and you guys add so much to our channel. And again, I want to make sure I shared that we find a way to give it back in one form or another. Just kind of want to put that out there. Um, so, as you already know, we're going to be talking about the four keys to knowing your self worth. Now, want you to understand right now, this is going to be a multi week conversation. So, if you were with us and you might want to grab a pen and a piece of paper or something of that nature, because I think this is going to be a pretty in depth and a very good conversation as well. So, in this conversation, I want to start off by painting a problem. And if I can, I want to do a little story time. Let's change it up a little. I'm gonna do a little story time. So there was a man named Jack who worked at a large corporation. Jack had always struggled with feelings of self-doubt and insecurity, and he often felt like he didn't belong among his colleagues. He worked hard and tried to impress his bosses, but no matter how much he accomplished, he never felt like he was enough. One day, the company announced a major promotion that Jack had been hoping for. He was thrilled at the opportunity, but he was also terrified. He was worried that if he failed, it would confirm all of his worst fears about himself. As the days went by, Jack began to engage in self sabotaging behaviors. He stayed up late and neglected his health, telling himself that he needed to work harder to prepare for the promotion. He also started to doubt his own abilities and wondered if he was really cut out for the job. Finally, the day of the promotion arrived. Jack went in feeling anxious and unprepared, and he knew that he was setting himself up for failure. When the results were announced, Jack was devastated to learn that he had not gotten a promotion. Now, as you heard that story, I'm sure some of you may have resonated with Jack. I know I can look back over my life, and I remember times feeling like Jack as well. By the end of this conversation, you will be more aware of a more accurate perspective of your self worth and be offered the opportunity to accurately align yourself with that awareness. So, with that being said, gentlemen, as always, we like to start off with a reflective conversation. So, for starters, what events or experiences have contributed to creating an understanding of your self worth?
For me, I'll start with just saying being in the military. Being in the military and retiring and doing 20 years, when you grew up in the military, at least for me, when I came in, I wasn't on the path to nowhere. I was just waking up and just being alive. And life was just happening to me. There wasn't too much planning going on. There wasn't too much of nothing. It was wake up and do something, and with that, I think it came with a little bit of not um, creating any type of self worth because it was just more so you wake up and you do and you do and you do. Don't really necessarily think about yourself. Don't necessarily think about this. Don't really, like, I never really thought about myself. I thought about my image, you know what I mean, as a soldier, as a non commissioned officer in the military. But I didn't necessarily really think about my self worth. It wasn't until I retired And, you know, it was in my 40s when I really started to understand really what self-worth was. And then once I started understanding what self-worth was and started looking back and reflecting on my life, I realized that I probably didn't have much. But then going forward, I started understanding and started I don't know, just things just started changing and opening up. But I know this is more so on some of the experiences. So just overall, my experiences in the military and getting out of the military and being able to reflect back on some of my accomplishments that I did help create some of my self-worth that I have now.
Now, let me ask this because I'm glad you mentioned it. You mentioned self-image, or you were focused on your image when you was in the military. Can you
Mhm.
kind of like paint the picture and help us understand what exactly do you mean?
Well, in the military, you know, kind of what you were talking about was, you know, that promotion and not being ready for it. Like I wasn't ready for sergeant. I wasn't ready for staff sergeant. I definitely wasn't ready for sergeant first class. But we get promoted on potential. However, I didn't always get looked at every month. You know, we looking at those points trying to get promoted, right? So we're thinking we're good enough, but we don't necessarily know if we're going to be effective enough in our jobs and skills to be able to do it at the next level. However, we get upset when we don't necessarily get it. So at the same time, my image was more so about, like I mentioned before, I was taught some good things and bad things about how to be a non-commissioned officer. I My image was about, you know, I need to dress a certain way, I need to look a certain way, my boots need to be shined a certain way. You know, back in the day, I'm old school. And then when I came forward, you know, to the new uniform, always clean boots, good headgear, always clean shaved, always presenting a certain presence or image of what the non-commissioned officer is supposed to look like and what the non-commissioned officer is supposed to be. So that was more so my image and what I was trying to achieve based off of what I was learning and based off of what I was taught in the military, but it had nothing to do um with my self-worth.
Man, I like that because what I'm hearing you say is that you felt as though if you looked the part, then people would buy it.
Mhm.
Because that was one of the things that I heard, like, a
Yeah.
lot in the military. If you look like a soldier, then people will buy what you're selling. So if your boots are spit shine, if your uniform is pressed, clean shaven, and you look like you don't eat a whole chicken every night going home when you go home for dinner, then people will believe that you're a soldier, and all you have to do is be that moving forward. So good point. I'm glad you brought that to the table, and I really want to talk about that later. So thank you for that, sir. Uh, Tawami or Roland, what you got, brothers?
I jump out there. Even there's moments today, right? Because full transparency is what we do on this platform, right? It's still moments today that I struggle because so there's moments I can get caught up looking at where I felt like I should be, and watching other people who are where I thought I should have been or done accomplished what I should have done, and I'm looking at certain things that I'm still struggling to do or to build or to maintain, and and that is a fight for myself. But where my help comes in at is because when I realized, first of all, I'm just gonna jump out there, right? When I realized who I was in the Most High and not in myself or in the eyesight of man or what other people thought I should have been or was supposed to be. But when I realized who I was to the Father, it changed things for me, you know, and in the midst of that understanding, he just continued to echo into to my heart, you know, you have I loved among above all the families of the earth. And at first I didn't really understand it, but coming in coming into full understanding of who you are in him, for me, that's where my help comes, because I don't have to worry about how I view myself or what limits I put on myself or what markers I put on myself for what age, but knowing that there's a plan that supersedes me, and all I have to do is live within the vision that he has exposed to me at this moment. And I can't live on nobody else. I can only live on what the Father has shown me for me right now and what he has given me right now. Right now, he's giving me a panel of brothers that I can talk with every week and pour my heart out. And then before and after the show, y'all, I don't, and even though y'all don't do it intentionally, but y'all encourage. Even during the show, y'all encourage, and it helps build me up. He gave us a circle. What we said the other day, you can't choose your relatives, but you can choose your family. Well, I would say he chose my family. He put me in a circle that helps me understand that when I look at you brothers, man, I look at you brothers like this is the image that I saw 20 years ago when I said I wanted to join the military. This is who I thought I wanted to be, or just as far as how y'all carry yourselves as men and how y'all, stand on what you stand on and believe what you believe. And for y'all to accept me into y'all circle as a brother and as a friend, to me says, well, even how I see myself, they don't see me. They, the people around you see you better than you see you sometimes. And that sometimes is enough encouragement to say, hey, I may not be what I think I should be, but I ain't doing everything bad.
Man, I greatly appreciate that, man. And we value you. Like, you are instant. And I told you that when I first asked you to join. You were instant plug and play, instant value added. So thank you for saying that. And right back at you, brother. We greatly appreciate sharing in conversations with you every week. Again, you just continue to add value. I wanted to say that before we turn the microphone over to the minister over there, because you know what happened when he gets started. But Minister Walker, what you got, sir?
Man, as they say, I'm gonna keep it 100. I was a bum, man. I was a bum, but I was a great thespian. I was a great actor. I could act the part. I could dress the part. I looked the part, but I was scared inside. Didn't know how to be a man, but I called myself a man. Didn't know how to be a father. Didn't know how to be a husband, but I would front my way through. And that's what I did. So when it came to being a father, if I was out there like Joe Clark saying, you eat, don't you? I ain't gonna say smoke crack, because that wasn't my babies. But I was that dude where I'm throwing accolades out there because I'm doing military schools. I'm, repelling, and I got stuff on my chest, and I going to school, and I'm doing all these things, but I'm hiding behind all those accolades, not knowing that, man, I don't know the first bit about this job. But I had a NCO told me it ain't about knowing everything. As long as you know somebody who knows what you need, you're good. And so I really didn't have any self-worth, any self-value, because I didn't think I brought anything to the table other than being able to act out the part. Like, oh, I can, joke my way through, or I can PT, I was good. I was good with the physical parts and all that other stuff. But when it came to the actual putting the rubber to the road, it's like, I was scared to jump out there. So it took me a while to actually have a sense of self-worth that would sustain me, because what I had before to so-called sustain me were just mere accolades and being able to act the part.
Man, so you know what? This is why I don't like you going before me, because your response was like 93% of what I was actually thinking. Like, for me, it's exactly what he just said. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea whether I was good at what I was doing. I just felt like, going back to what Garfield said, if I looked the part, then someone would actually believe that I knew what I was doing. So, it kind of goes back, and you guys know it. You got to have the latest of this and the latest of that. Have on the, as we would call today, the finest linens and the threads and whatever that looks like. All because we wanted to present an image that said value. We had no idea what our value was, and we surely didn't know what our worth was. But at the end of the day, what I seen other people do, I look at what they received in response, and I say, you know what, I'm gonna do that too. So I'm gonna try to make sure I dress well. I'm gonna make sure I smell good and have a haircut and all that other great stuff. And then hopefully I can garnish the same type of respect that they get. And so that's what I did. That's what I learned. I had no idea how to, like you said, Roland, had no idea what manhood looked like, had no idea what a father was, had no idea what being married was. It was just like, okay, shoot, we're just gonna jump off this cliff and just figure it out en route and then crash and burn at the bottom. And then hey, I'm gonna climb back up to the top and do it again. And that's really what it was. Like I had no idea. So when you start talking about events or experiences, there were several that contributed to creating an understanding of what I perceived my self-worth at the time. Again, I think somebody kind of mentioned some of that in the chat. Cassandra said life experiences. I agree. The life experiences that happened, I kind of talked about it before, being, brought up in a certain area, being dark skinned. Wesley Snipes hadn't hit the scene yet, so we weren't popular. I'm just being honest. So that was part of it. And anybody who knows me, anybody who I've shared conversation with, I would say I used to have low self-esteem when I was young, simply because like a lot of the things that happened, I used to get picked at a lot, whatever. It made me resilient, it made me have thick skin, but nonetheless, up under, I'm a scared little boy, not even understanding how to manage these feelings that I have. Don't want to lash out at people because I don't want to be the little angry black man, a little angry black boy, right? I don't want to bring in shame or drama to my mama because at the end of the day, I got to deal with her if I bring drama home. So it's like all of these things factor in. And then when you start talking about relationships, oh my goodness, again, had no idea what a relationship was. So we walk around talking about, do you like me? Check yes or no. Sure, everybody did that, right? You're getting into something that you had no blueprint on how to work effectively. So when we start looking at these things, man, it's just so many different experiences that we can talk about, so many different things that created an outcome or a less desirable outcome. And then it's like, what do we do after that, right? So man, I greatly appreciate you guys adding all of that. And I want to make sure I'm honoring everybody. Let me back up and speak to some people because there was some people who came in. First and foremost, Lisa Keys, thank you so much again, one of our super supporters, and we value you. And again, thank you. She made mention, I put it up earlier. She made mention understanding I determine my professional value, not someone else. Yeah, I began to build on that. Absolutely, absolutely. Welcome to the show, Tabitha Johnson, Shannon Washington. Good to see you, Antoine Christopher, the artist himself. Good to see you, brother. Mr. Antoine Lyons, good to see you. Miss Arlene Hurst, good to see you. Let me see. Lisa Key says life happened. I agree. Michelle Ray says past parental relationships with parents and step parents. She's so much better now. Sure, absolutely. I agree 100%. Like some of those relationships, and we talked about parents, I mean, probably about 2 months straight. Like some of those relationships kind of moved us into space to where we had a difficult time harmonizing with our emotions. So absolutely, I agree 100%. Let me see. Let's see. Tabitha Johnson says those thoughts, beliefs will stop you in your tracks. Sure, absolutely. Every time, leave you in a point of just paralysis. Let's see. Lisa says, I think we all have had a season of stupor, totally unaware, but we have a Father who covers us in our time of ignorance. Absolutely. And we definitely appreciate his grace through all of that. So man, you guys are on it. So that kind of moved me now to, we're going to get after the first key point. And I put a question in the chat, and I want you guys to kind of answer that question as we go and start to define this piece right here. So key point number 1 is understanding that there is a difference between worth and value. And I know I kind of changed the words up intentionally, but I did that for a reason. I want to start off by saying, for me, especially when I started my coaching practice, and I think I probably shared this with a few of you, I struggled at first when it came to pricing. And Garfield, I don't know if you had to deal with this as well, but I struggled with pricing because at one point in time I was thinking to myself like, well, I don't want to make it too much because then people won't buy into it or that's too much for them. They got bills they got to pay. So I'm coming up with all different types of excuses, but still have yet to set a price. And then I went to a conference and we asked one of our mentors, because it was other people who had that question as well. So what do we charge for this? And what do we charge for that? What do we charge for this? And I kid you not, his response was, it doesn't matter. So it's like, that's not helping us. Like, we need an answer. Like, what do we charge for this? Doesn't matter. So he went around the room. He started asking people, like, what are you charging? And they gave a number. What are you charging? And they gave a number. What are you charging? And they gave a number. And as I'm listening to these people give their numbers, what I realized is that I was putting myself on the clearance rack and then telling people that financing was available. So I was putting myself on the clearance rack and allowing other people to put me on layaway at the same time, simply because I did not know what value that I was bringing to the table with the things that I have. So that being said, gentlemen, understanding the difference between worth and value, how can we distinguish between our inherent worth as human beings and the external values and standards that we use to judge ourselves and others?
How can we distinguish between our inherent worth?
I forgot to tell you guys, this is Hard Question Friday.
Yeah, this is a deep one, definitely. I think that when it comes to self-worth and value to me, I'm just gonna go off the dome. Value would be monetary value. Value is not the monetary part. Worth would be the monetary part, but value is what something inherently. What does it mean to you to have this? Like, I think that now I can say I bring value because I'm not just a pretty face, not just a big brain. I'm not just these things. I gotta. Hey, if I don't do it,
We know.
say a dog, they won't wag his own tail, right? But when it comes to the worth part, like you said, my friend went down to Houston last weekend and had her little pop-up shop, and people didn't want to pay the price that she had set for her items. They came, they were trying to, as you said, put you on the clearance rack, and they wanted a deal. She had already set the value because she understood the time and everything that she put in with her product. But to them, it wasn't worth it because, one, they hadn't experienced it yet. But so they wanted something for nothing. Their value for it was minimal because of the lack of experience with said item. So I think that when we look at worth versus value, you set your value out there and also your worth, because it may not be worth a dime to somebody, but it may be worth millions to another. That's why you have to continue to stay in your realm, stay in your domain, and don't let anybody lessen your value to say, well, this is all it's worth to me. Now, if that's what they can afford, that's a difference. But if they just want to lowball you, that's a totally different thing. And I think too many of us in our culture are getting lowballed when we provide services of value, services that make meaning and change lives.
I like it.
Man, this is Hard Question Friday. I'm still trying to break it down. I'm going to start off with, what Roland was starting with. And, I don't know if I'm different or same or we're, but when I'm looking at worth, I'm thinking more of a monetary, something that we can not necessarily touch, but, like if I'm saying something is worth, like those shoes are worth, Nikes are worth, $100 and Bobos are worth $10, right? But the value, I had all my talking points and I was thinking about it now, and I'm getting mixed up right there with the difference between the worth and the value. And I think because I was trying to use an analogy when I should just let me leave it straight. So I think your worth is more so something you can put money on, and your value is kind of what you bring to the table. You know what I mean? So I may be worth $100,000, but what value am I adding to someone, or what my value has nothing to do with how much money that I have, if that makes sense, at least to me. I'm trying to separate the two because I think that I think that they can be similar, but I think it depends on how you use them, that they could be differently. I think that they have some similarities. But I think that they're different. And I don't know, maybe for me, I might need to take a step back and kind of understand or get a really good understanding of the difference between worth and value, and maybe set that baseline before I continue on. So um, I'm gonna pause right now.
You gotta take your time, brother. Brother Gaddy, what you got?
Man, I don't know why you did this to us today. Whew. See, so I keep thinking about, what is it, First Corinthians 6:20, and I have to go there because when I hear the word worth, I always think about, for you were brought with a price. Therefore glorify Elohim in your body and in your spirit, which are his. And so for me, understanding the difference between my worth and my value, right? I have to put my worth in the Most High, right? But my value is not just what I expose to the world, but what I give and pour out into the world, into my circle, into my community, right? Because even, let's say the smartest man in the world has knowledge that is probably worth something, but it has no value if he hoards it. So, so that's how I'm viewing this. So when I go to the scripture and I realize, first of all, my body and my spirit belongs to the Most High, so my worth is high because he paid a price that I couldn't pay, that you can't pay, nobody in the chat could pay. That price was paid, right? But now that I've done, now that is done, now I must glorify the Father in my body, because that is the value that I give to the body. That's how I'm viewing it. And you can tell me if I'm off, but help me out there, coach.
I will not tell you that you're off, sir. No, sir, you are not. In fact, that's exactly how I was envisioning it. And I think the way that you scripted it to me is I mean, like, spot on. Like, that's how I envision it. Like, when you look at my inherent worth, it's priceless. I was bought at a price that I could not pay. You were bought at a price that you could not pay. Therefore, the value, right, the external value and standards that we use to judge ourselves, initially, like we talked about, those standards were very low. However, when we start to understand that inherent worth, that we were bought at such a price that no one else could pay, then that helps us to realize that, hey, I've thought of myself too low. Like I said earlier, I had myself in the clearance section and then letting everybody else put me on layaway, right? It way too low. So when you look at it from that perspective, sir, I think you're spot on. Brother Martin, it looked like you ready to, you had something right now.
Man, I'm still confused.
That's all right.
I come on here to learn too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still thinking that there's a difference between worth and value, but it seems like there seem to be a lot of similarities based off the conversation. But just in my understanding, I see them as being two totally different things. So I'm not connecting all of the dots.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's turn it over to the brother minister so he can bring it home.
when you think of value, if you say you like Jordans, right? So you like Michael Jordan shoes and you paying upwards of $300 some dollars, whatever they are. You paying all this money for these shoes.
Perhaps.
Now, the value is $300 there. Now, if you take those same shoes and you are in Iraq or you in the actual desert and you have a necessity of running, jumping, doing things, I don't think those shoes gonna come in too handy. I don't think the value for those shoes will be over the value of some boots. The boots will come in more handy than a pair of shoes, or say some Yeezy flip flops, or that they, or whatever it is. The value is determined by the necessity of whatever it is. You bring value to different circles, not because of just your information, but it's the need for the individuals. So now your worth is already determined by you. because it's like I was in the chat. I was saying something like if I got a baseball cap, say I got a football cap. Now I bought this cap. I think it's $39, something like that. It's worth $39. It's used, so it's worth $10. But if the Detroit Lions won the Super Bowl and all the teams signed this hat, now the value skyrockets because of the hat ain't changed.
Even though it's still only worth $39 or $10, the value of it makes
Has
it
gone up.
more. Okay.
Because of the importance of it, because of the names on it, because of what's in it. You have value because of what's in you. You have value because of you've been to school. You have value because of your experiences. You have value, so you continue to add value to yourself. So when somebody say, like Coach was saying, how much it costs for you to speak at this engagement, we try to say, okay, we go in the low ball here because we don't want to get turned down. We'll say $1,000. And then people are like, well, dang, I'm getting 20,000. We lowball ourselves, not expecting, or we aren't looking at the value that we bring to every arena that we come into.
So maybe because we don't know our value, we can't determine our worth.
You flipping it. Yeah, flip
The
it.
other way, yeah.
The other
Yeah.
way. Okay.
Yeah. When you understand your worth,
Yeah. I think
you
that's what
can
I meant.
set a better value. Yeah. The price. What
The value is
what
there.
Fat Joe say? Yesterday's price is not today's price. Now that I understand my worth, the price goes up. The price is different.
I like to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So but in some cases, if you're not getting
Can I
go ahead.
Let me do this.
Three different thoughts.
No,
Go
you
ahead.
get because I don't believe that you're the only person that has it mixed up as well. So I want to kind of put this out there. So you own a house, right? They asked you for a certain price for that house. So in their mind, this house is worth this. Now, did you pay what they asked for?
No, I paid more.
You paid more. Okay. So to you, it was valued. It was valued more than that. I like to say it like this. In most cases, people don't pay the asking price.
Oh, that's what you meant. Oh, yeah. I
Right.
paid more than what it was actually listed for the house. Yeah.
Probably because you was in a bidding war.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. So yeah, when you go in a bidding war, that's when the price ends up going up. So more than what they're asking. So ideally, the initial price is what they're saying this house is worth in this neighborhood with these amenities in this environment. That's the worth of it. So they're asking you for the worth. Now, in your mind, I'm not paying that for this house. I need you to knock about $30,000 off that house. Therefore, I would do that. So in their mind, they're like, yeah, well, we ain't gonna knock 30 off. How about 5? You say, how about 20? How about 8? You see what I'm saying? So you guys are negotiating. The worth hasn't changed. The worth is still the exact same thing because of the materials, because of the amenities, none of that changed. But the value at that point has diminished just slightly because of what you paid. Now don't get me wrong. When you go back and sell it, you can go back and sell it for what they were asking, and in a lot of cases, it goes up. So the worth at that point goes up based upon the maturity of the neighborhood, so forth and so on. I say it this way: for us, when we understand our worth, we project our value. When we don't understand our worth, we project it at a lower, at some place lower than what we actually are intended to be. So once you progressively become aware of, like I said before, you were purchased at a price that no one else could pay. Once we become aware of that, then the projection changes. The projection, the aperture of your projector expands simply because now I have a requirement to project value simply because I now have a better understanding of my worth.
And if I give an easy example, remember a few years ago, you could find Champion when Kmart was around. You could find Champion in Kmart. Nobody was wearing Champion. But
Yes,
then
sir.
I think with Lil Wayne or somebody, he wore some Champion. Champion
Mhm.
raised their doggone prices.
Ain't been the
So
same since.
it
Chris
worked the
Brown
same.
had some on too.
Yeah. So it's like, okay.
That was our
Yeah.
play clothes when I was growing up. We
Yeah.
bought Champions. That was our play clothes. When we got home, change it to your play clothes. You know, kids
That's
don't have that nowadays. But that's even another example. That's because these clothes that my mama bought for us to go to school, the price was higher than Champions. So we couldn't wear those, and now prices have changed. So before people judge me, you couldn't wear that $10 shirt outside to go play. You better go get that $2.99 clearance rack shirt, that Champs shirt. And if you wore Champs to school, you got clowned back in the 90s. You know.
Say the 90s.
Yeah, I said the 90s. I know y'all joined the military in the 90s, you know.
I'm just saying.
My birthday tomorrow. I was telling Coach, it's 31 years tomorrow is when I came in the military. 31 years.
This guy here. Listen, listen. I think it's important. We ain't gonna go down memory lane about when Roland joined the army when they were wearing all green, clear, just the flat green. Yeah. Listen, I want to make sure that we are abundantly clear on the difference between worth and value, because one is inherent. I put that there intentionally. One is inherent and the other is projected. I think that's important to understand. When we do not understand that, yeah, the OD Green, thank you, Michelle. When we do not understand that, we're projecting the wrong thing. We're projecting way lower. We're shooting for the ground when that's not where we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to be putting ourselves on sale. We're not supposed to put ourselves in the clearance rack. Like, you are instant. When you show up, you are instant value added. Why? Because it's external. And that's the thing that we have to understand. So what we have to do is look at those external values and standards and raise them up. It's important. It is important to understand that because of your worth, you are worth far more than any circumstance that you've ever been in your life ever told you. Whatever your neighborhood looked like growing up doesn't matter. Whatever your situation looked like growing up doesn't matter. Failed relationship doesn't matter. All of that stuff is totally irrelevant. Those were simply lessons. That's it.
Yeah.
When we look at it from that perspective, it did not rob you of your worth. It may have hurt a little bit. That's okay. You will be okay. I hate to say it that way, but that's the truth. You are worth far more than what your situation that you've been through or are currently going through is telling you. Stop listening to it and listen to the person who gave you your value. And I don't want to get ahead of myself. Teresa Austin, Miss Teresa Austin, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Again, we always value and appreciate all of our super supporters. And again, if you're on YouTube and you want to be a super supporter, look up under the chat window. You'll see a square there with a $sign. Click on it, and whatever your contribution is, we greatly appreciate it. It goes back into the channel. And again, you will get one of these very nice Empowering Perspective community shirts. Listen, you guys are on it. I greatly appreciate you. Tabitha was dropping nuggets in the line in the chat. I greatly appreciate that as well. I put her comment up early. Cassandra said that worth is monetary, value gives experiences and emotional growth. So want to make sure I honored what she is saying. Michelle says worth has consideration, value is how you hold someone, importance, preservation. So I want to make sure I'm bringing these up here. I don't want to. I think Tabitha responded because I asked her a question. I think that's it. She said, when you value yourself and what you bring to the table, your worth is typically much higher. Therefore, you're likely to not compromise on things that decrease your worth. Yeah, I definitely can agree with that. And again, it's just understanding your worth first, and then you project the value that reflects it. You don't demean anybody, you don't belittle anybody, you don't tell anybody they're beneath you, right? It's just that having a better understanding of what that looks like. And Lisa Keys, our resident real estate broker, she said, you as a consumer, a home buyer, you determine the value of the house. It don't matter how much I'm selling it for. It only matters how much you're going to pay for it. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa Keys. Avow Men, welcome to the show. Good to see you. Let me see. I want to make sure I'm grabbing everybody. Okay, very good. So now that we've gotten there, because I think it's important when we start considering our worth and value, I think sometimes, just like in the past, we may have devalued ourselves for others, but there's also the other side of that conversation as well. And we call this the inflated persona. Now, I think the inflated persona is very interesting. It refers to an exaggerated or false sense of one's own self importance, status, or ability that a person may adopt to mask their underlying feelings of inadequacy or low self worth. This persona is often driven by a need for external validation and a fear of rejection or failure. So, when it comes down to an exaggerated persona, what we have to understand, and we have to be consciously aware that this happens more frequently than you can imagine. So only thing you have to do is just be quiet, and you can sense it, you can tell it, and it'll be like just loud. So, gentlemen, question: in what ways can an inflated persona manifest differently across various social, cultural, or professional contexts? Told you, hard question Friday.
In the professional world, you're taught to practice your what is it, your elevator speech, right? You to get the position, to get consideration, sometimes you have to exaggerate the game a little bit, so that I look at it in that sense. It can be a positive, just like in the military, right? When y'all talk about looking the part, when you go before the board to make sergeant and staff sergeant, you make sure that uniform fresh out the cleaners, everything. I mean, you putting your measurements on point. You trying hard to make sure that it look good when they look at you. Make sure it matches your ERB. Make sure your hair is cut. You nicely shaved, and you do these things because you're trying to put forth this idea that I deserve this promotion. So, in a sense, you inflate for a professional reason, for the sense of moving forward or progression. But I think in a social setting, it can become more overwhelming, and it becomes it turns into a situation where people don't like to be around you because they don't want to hear you boast. So if every time I talk to you, all I hear you do is telling me about everything that's great in your life, or how you so great, or what you used to do, how good you was at this, or you know those guys. Every time, like, man, we went out and played ball the other day, and such balled out. Well, when I was younger, I used to. Well, I don't care what you used to do. That's not the conversation, and so that becomes overwhelming, and makes you hard to be around in the social setting, and that's something that we have to be conscious of. So I think it has its balance depending on where and how you're using it, right? Like you talked about earlier, setting your price for a public speaking engagement. If I'm gonna set my price at 10,000, I gotta at least show something worth that $10,000. Just like when you post your YouTube video, you showing the highlights. Now, when you go watch the video, every part of that video ain't as inflated as the clips that you showed in your advertisement, but it has its place. I'll say that.
Now, we live in a culture, we have a culture where we follow stars. And most of the stars that we like to follow have overinflated egos, whether it be Kanye, whether it be Terrell Owens, Chad Ochocinco. They knew that we would get more publicity if we did the rah, rah, rah stuff. Our game is tight, but if we add a little extra flair, think about it. Patrick Beverley is not even a top 50 guard. to me. But Patrick Beverly does a lot of this, and he is braggadocious, so, and doing all that, to LeBron, like, come on, he's too small. He doing all those things, and what he does is he brings attention to himself. And so when you bring attention to yourself in that genre of profession, you will get people to say, hey, we gonna pay him, because people will pay. How can I say this without being people will pay us to act like fools. So a lot of times people will pay you because you're gonna take away the positive images of us. And when you're out there acting the fool, buffoonery, and all that other stuff, cooning and these things, people gonna put you in front of the camera because they know, oh, he gonna act the fool. That's why when I lived in the city, I hated to see some of us give news interviews, because it seemed like they find that dude with the half wet Jerry curl and can't speak English too well, and they go ask him some real questions, and he go give them some real answers. Now we understand that those real answers are true, but it's like, man, he's a reflection of us. So the inflated persona can go both ways, whether it's professionally, whether it's culturally or socially, because we follow social trends.
In what ways can an inflated persona manifest differently across various social, cultural, or professional contexts? I'm gonna go back to the military. You know, Son of Timothy just hit on it a little bit. But yeah, so like when I was in the military, I had this inflated persona because I was trying to be this, this big shot staff sergeant or whatever like this. And what it caused, I think it caused me to lose. I would say it it can cause a loss of self, more loss of self. And what I mean by that is this: the more I have an inflated persona, I looked at words like it was in the definition and stuff about an inflated persona and low self-worth. So that means that a lot of these behaviors is acting, or so if I'm acting and I'm putting on something or trying to be something that I'm not, then I'm becoming farther and farther away from who I am, who I truly am, to my being. And I think socially, what that can do is it can cause you to have issues in relationships, in professional, in business, and all of these work relationships, because now you're having an inflated persona, but that's not really who you are. And it's only a matter of time before people really find out the true you. But because you have been displaying this true persona of who you actually are, and that's not really you, you can maybe at some point maybe fumble the bag or get found out. One of the things that I learned a long time ago is that even if you get promoted ahead of times, it'll always catch up with you. You know what I mean? If you get promoted too early, it will catch up with you. So, we saw some of those guys in the military who made 7 and 7, but stayed 7 for a long time, or maybe never made 8. You know what I mean? Because they never really learned what it took, or whatever different reason. So I would say just it can cause a loss of self, because when you're being someone who you're not who you are, which in return it separates you from who you are at the core. And it can be hard sometimes trying to go back and find out who you are now, because you are now up here and living up here, and that's not really who you are to the core.
Man, I love it. You guys are all over this one. I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. Like, and I want to pick up where Garfield left off. Like, it creates anxiety for you to have to keep up the charade that you're putting on. Like, I don't care what setting you're in. If you're talking social setting, you want to be like the social butterfly, the life of the party, but that's not who you are, right? You just want to be liked. And again, you always go back to that, because in the society, the word like has replaced love. So we would do whatever for likes. We'll get on TikTok and do this, whatever this thing. But yet we'll claim, oh, I want to be in a serious relationship. But nobody can take you seriously, because you have put this person out front, and this person is who everybody believes you are, but that's not really who you are. And so now you're claiming you want something, but the person that you show us, that's not who we believe. Like, I mean, and then going back to Garfield's point, because you can't maintain that for an extended period of time, at some point the mask has to come off. And then when the mask comes off and somebody bought what you was selling up front, and then they realize who you really are, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for that. You're somebody totally different than the person I met. From a cultural standpoint, again, I think this one here is a lost art for me, simply because I think culturally, for the most part, collectively, we kind of lost our cultural identity. I'm just being honest. I know it was difficult to hear, but I'm just being totally transparent. We don't have the love that we used to have for our neighbors. We don't look out for one another like we used to. We don't check on people like we used to. We don't allow the people down the street to correct our children, and then we get mad at them just simply because they said something to our child, let alone don't even let them think about disciplining our child. Oh, that's a whole fight. So when you look at it from a cultural perspective, because we are clueless about who we are, we just put forward whatever we think the society will accept, or what we think is good behavior, which in 9 times out of 10 is not. And then move into the professional context, it's a thing where you meet a person and then you automatically start giving them your resume. Or were you used to working for him? Or I used to do this, I used to do that, I used to be the chief of this, I used to be the director of this, and so forth and so on. Why not? Hey, how you doing? You know, tell me more about you. How did you come here? Like, do you have family, things of that nature? Get to know the person, as opposed to putting your resume up front so that you are hoping to impress somebody by your accolades. I don't care if you got a PhD. I don't care if you got a master's degree. I don't care if you got 15 certifications and you do coding and C plus and bash and all that. I don't care. That's just the thing. Stop putting your resume up front, hoping somebody will grandfather you to a position of esteem. That is wrong. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about the inflated persona. If all you can do is talk about yourself, then that's part of the issue. And oh yeah, by the way, the question that you have to ask yourself is, the person that you're talking about, why you're talking about yourself, is the person that you're talking about, is that really who you are? Or is that who you want people to believe that you are, because you're afraid of them learning the true nature of yourself? So the inflated persona can be a very interesting thing. Take the mask off, reveal yourself, learn how to become vulnerable, right? It's okay. Everybody does not have to put you up on a pedestal. Stop seeking to be on the pedestal, right? Just like I said before, in prior to, when we don't understand our self-worth, we put it all the way on the floor and just let people just, walk all over, do whatever, because we don't understand our worth. But then on the other side of that coin, when we don't understand our worth, then we'll say, oh, well, I want you to value me at this point. So I'm going to go out here and do this. And I'm going to go do this. And I'm going to go do this. That way, now I have something to tell them so they can be impressed. I'm pressed by me. Yes, you're pressed. That's what it is. You're pressed. So we need to cut that out. And I'm sorry to kind of go on that rant. It sounded like a rant, but at the end of the day, this is terrible.
But Lisa Keys made a valid point, right? She said the mindset is a virus, and our resume is not indicative of true character. And this is why when people get to really know you, they don't like you like they did when they first met you, because you're not that. Even if that inflated persona gets you friends, it'll also lose you friends once they find out that you ain't worth nothing, that you messy, that you stab them in the back, you talk about them as soon as you turn around to their friends. It's not. It doesn't really show us who we truly are, and I think a lot of us were taught not to really be who we truly are when we meet people.
Well, society has changed where we have a lot of clickbait conversations, and you see that with people like Charleston White. And Charleston White, in the interview, he said that he was doing an interview and it was a positive interview and the information was good, but he knew nobody was going to watch that. So at the end of the interview, he pulled the gun and he started acting the fool, acting like he was going to shoot somebody and all this other stuff, and he said more people watched that part of the interview than the whole 10 times over than the whole interview. because people want to see stuff like that. And that's why he does a lot of that stuff for shock value or for clickbait to gather attention, because we want to see the drama. We want to see the basketball wives fight. We don't want to see them get along. We want to see these people arguing and fussing. And you ain't going out there to see, oh, it's a love story and it's nice. That's cool. When somebody gonna snatch somebody wig off? Because we want to see the drama. Mary said no more, but yeah, we want more. Matter of fact, think about Mary J. Blige. We like Mary when she going through. That's when she made her best music.
No,
Absolutely.
No, I don't like Mary.
Well, you don't like
No more pain.
Are we
What?
serious? Are we serious right now? I never did like Mary. I'm sorry.
I'm logging off.
Oh my
Mary.
God.
That's an episode, man.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Because I think this is important. And trust me, I get it. We're still on point number 1, but point number 1 is this important. And I owe you 4. Point number 1 is this important. Understanding the difference between value and worth. And when we don't, this is what happens. We either overvalue ourselves or undervalue ourselves. Let me be 100% transparent. Every brother on this panel, we're all worth the same because we were purchased at the same price by the same purchaser. I want to make sure I'm saying that. So why does it make sense that I want Garfield to lift me up above him? No. Now, if he chooses to do it, he is within his own rights, but I don't want him to do it because of anything special I kind of pushed upon him. We're supposed to esteem others higher than ourselves. That helps us to become humble. And the more we practice that, the more humble, yes, it's humble, not humble, as some people like to say, the more humble we can become. I'm sorry, man. I apologize. But so, yeah.
Humble.
Yeah, see, there you go. So that's something that helps us to become more humble. So we're supposed to esteem others higher than ourselves. But when we want people to esteem us, we're trying to be glorified. I'm not going to go down that path today. But my whole point is that's not how it's supposed to be. So when we understand who our purchaser is, when we understand the price that he paid, then what we have to do is extend value to others. And that's how it works. So again, great points. I greatly appreciate everything that you guys are saying. Man, you guys are on fire in the chats. I want to make y'all over here telling me how tall y'all are. Yeah.
She said low hanging fruit.
Mary J. Blige, I agree. Let me see.
Don't do that, Lisa Keys. Don't do that.
Our culture shapes the way we work and play, and it makes how we view ourselves, and it makes how we view ourselves and others. Yeah, absolutely. Our culture, especially the condition and the mindset that we are as a culture right now, it kind of helps to shape that as well. I put it up here earlier. I still want to bring it out. Michelle said there's a thin line between arrogance and inflated persona. Well, a very thin line. I would say that it's a very thin line because inflated persona can be arrogance, right? I think that it's all about the personality and the way it's projected, the way it's extended. But there are also subtle approaches as well. People can subtly want others to value them and lift them up and so forth and so on. And to Mr. Gaddy's point, man, I definitely like this. This is a tweetable moment right here. So for you guys, the mindset is a virus. Our resume is not indicative of our true character. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. All right, moving on to the next point. Next point we're going to bring to the table is the self-worth theory. Now, I think the self-worth theory is important because if you guys remember me saying before, you should never, like I talk about it with men because society believed that the definition of manhood is providing and protecting. Like if you ask most people, like what do men do? They provide and protect. And we have said before that men get judged on what they do. And so that's what the self-worth theory is all about. I want to make sure that I'm crystal clear when I say that. That's the self-worth theory. That is not who you are. That's why I keep saying stop allowing people to place your identity into the things that you do. You are not the things that you do. You're not a you're and let me put it like this. I always like to ask people questions. Like if I was to ask you right now to describe yourself to me in one sentence or less, most people start off with their profession. Wrong. That's not who you are. That's what you do. You're not a doctor. You're not a lawyer. You're not a whatever it is you do. Yeah, that's what you do. Who you are is far more amazing than that. So when we look at the self-worth theory, it posits that an individual's main priority in life is to find self-acceptance, and that self-acceptance is often found through achievement. So what we do is we run ourselves crazy just trying to achieve. I need to achieve this. I need to achieve this. Kind of goes back to the concept of what we was just talking about, inflated persona. You're trying to achieve because you want to be accepted. That's what the self-worth theory is. Therefore, there are 4 elements to the self-worth theory. First and foremost, it says, huh? No, first and foremost, it says it like this: ability equals performance, which equals self-worth. So, in other words, your ability equals self-worth. Think of a basketball player. A professional basketball player, his self-worth is found in his ability to play basketball until he matures or he or she matures, and then they create a persona for themselves outside of basketball itself. The other side of it is effort equals performance, which equals self-worth. Therefore, effort equals self-worth. So this person will be a overachiever through the idea of working hard. So they'll work hard, they'll work long, and all that other great stuff. Therefore, their ability to work and obtain and achieve things based upon effort and work, that equates to their worth. This is where men have been placed for years. Provide and protect. Provide and protect. Why? Because based upon what you do, that equals the worth that you have to the family. It's not true. So, that being said, question: what role do societal and cultural influences play in shaping our sense of self-worth?
I think it's easy to look at what goes on social media, what goes on in the world, and then start comparing. And I think sometimes when we start comparing, we start to look at ourselves as look at what we're worth. And I think sometimes that's where the deserved mindset comes in. You know, I deserve this and I deserve that. You know, I deserve a Mercedes, but I work in McDonald's part time, 15 hours a week, and the rest of the time I play Xbox. Well, not necessarily, So I think some of the things that it causes, just when you look at society in the general, um, and you start to compare, or you start to look, you think that this is what my worth looks like. This is what I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to look like. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I think sometimes if you spend too much time in that, it can create a false sense of self-worth. You know what I mean? Because you're not necessarily, here I go again, back. You're not being true to yourself. And it's because you're listening to or paying attention to maybe the wrong things or the wrong influences and stuff like this. It could also be a good thing. You know what I mean? If you surround yourself with good information and good cultural influences and different things like that, you know what I mean? It can create a positive sense of self-worth just like that. If you're a child, you're growing up, you spend a lot of time at family reunions, you spend time with grandma and auntie and uncle, and they're imparting a lot of cultural things in you that's positive, and it can help you be great when you grow up. I think that, those can create a great sense of overall self-worth, just if, the influences are positive. So I think it can have a positive and negative effect, depending on what side of the fence you want to play on.
I'm gonna talk about cultural influence. At least for the '90s and the 2000s, she was one of the greatest influence in the cultures. Right? You remember when Mary J. Blige had everybody crying at "I'm Going Down"? I'm going down, a number
Not
one
me. I
song, right?
wasn't crying.
Well, she had the women crying. Let me say, saying "I'm going down," And then Waiting to Exhale came out, and then she turned around and said, I'm not gonna cry. Now women got empowered to not cry over no man because she had another number one song that year too, because of the greatness of her influence in the community, because she's a great artist, right? So I think that our culture Coach, you ain't gotta look at me like that. I'm just saying. But it's funny, and I did that on purpose to be petty to Lisa and Coach, because they're hating on Mary J. But the reality is, when it comes to our cultural influences, I think sometimes we have to be careful, because just like Mary J had y'all change from emotions one year to the next year of how you react to a man walking out on you or cheating on you. That's how we allow these influences to influence our entire life. We let people someone to write a song, and now that's the new chant for the culture. We run in the streets saying what somebody else say. You got jokers all over the place because Kevin Hart said, "Take the wheel, Jesus." Now everybody else think that's so spiritual. It's become the titles of everybody's sermon for the next 10 years. Like, all right, you're right, Jesus, take the wheel. I get it. You get a little more creative, but we even allow them to influence what we do in our quote unquote spiritual or religious settings. So at some point, we have to. That's when it goes back to understanding your self-worth. You have to understand your own self-worth. Then you're not influenced by Mary J, even though she's a great artist. Again, you're not influenced by the Kardashians or the housewives, or like Lisa said, the low-hanging fruit, right? We're not influenced by those things that have become our cultural influences. But and I say this, knowing the influences that they have on our culture, I think it's also important that we as a people get to choose our own cultural influences. We start backing people from our communities, from within our communities, that we know have a heart for our people, because we depend on somebody. And I know how people feel about certain people, but I remember when President Obama came out the woodwork, I was like, where'd he come from? I ain't seen this man on one interview in my life. I had to go YouTube him. But he was raised up out of nowhere, and he became everybody's hero, but we knew nothing about him because we didn't lift him up. But I'll leave that alone. I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings on that one.
Yeah, I don't know about the weed part because I followed politics back then. So even in Chicago and stuff, Illinois, I knew about Senator Obama. But we have done a terrible job of becoming our children's role models. So we've allowed the TV, we've allowed social media, we've allowed all these forums to make an imprint in our children's minds to where they look to them for status. So like Chris said, so now I got to have a Bentley. So I'm tripping if I don't get a Bentley. I'm tripping if I don't have the newest this. Like first you got to get some work ethic, and then some work. You got to get something going for yourself. And it's a terrible way to grow up when you got to look to somebody who can edit something, who can make it to where, oh, I can make this a good one. I'm going to take out all the bad parts. I'm going to take out all the bloopers. And you will think that I'm perfect. You will think that I'm actually living this life. And until I'm exposed, you will think I'm, the cat's meow. So we need to go back to actually training and teaching and living before our children in such a way that they can look to us and say, man, my dad is my role model. My mother's my role model. My uncles, I saw how they treated people in the community, not just on TV, but in the community, how they reacted to people. They weren't just nasty to people just because. They were protectors, providers, and all these things. And we need to learn that it's not about everything. Everything you see ain't gold. Everything shining ain't silver or gold. So we need to sit up there and evaluate who we follow, follow them home. That's what I was always told. Follow people home so you know how they actually treat the people, not how they treat people when they got a camera roll.
Yeah, I agree with that. In conjunction with everything that was already said, I agree. There has been a not so good job done in the role models that we are providing, that we have provided for the younger generation. And so when we look at these different roles, I think Chris, our brother, mentioned the whole social media thing, right? Social media has given us access to any and everybody in the comforts of their own home, wearing whatever it is they want to wear, doing whatever it is they want to do. On top of that, you also get to see the highlight reel of people's lives. So when you start looking at those things and you compare yourself to those highlight reels, it only makes sense that there at points in time you can experience some type of anxiety. So when you look at it, your child can actually accept someone else as a role model and know absolutely nothing about that person just because that person make X amount of dollars, like Chris said, drive a Bentley or, play in the NBA or play in the NFL, and you get to see about 30 minutes of their life a week, if that, because they got a little show or, whatever. And so, yeah, I want to do that. I want to have this. I want to have that. But again, it's just the same thing when we talk about the self-worth theory because in their mind they're looking at what somebody else is doing and they say I want to do that so I can have that, and if I can have that then people will like me, people will accept me, people will love me, whatever. Um and so across the board when we look at this whole thing, it just it's mind numbing, it's baffling, right? Like, I know for me, when I was younger, there was only a few people, within my family that I really spent a lot of time with, looked up to, watch how they moved, watch how they did this. Then was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that too. And then so I started picking up bits and pieces from these men in my family. You guys heard me talk about them, the Uncle Brigade. I picked up bits and pieces from those men, and I said, "Yeah, I'm accept. I'm gonna take that." Now it just seems like unless you have one of those close knit families where you have an available man who's home with his children and home with his wife and actually is teaching and all the other great stuff, then if you don't have that, then that child has all these different mediums, and I use that word intentionally, all these different mediums to where they can actually reach out and experience somebody else's life and then bask in their glory, bask in what they're doing because they want to be a part of that as well. So I think this is not only is this a interesting concept, but when you look at the self-worth theory, I think it's important for us to listen to what our children are saying, because when the child is talking about wanting to do this, I want to be like, what is it, the baby, little baby, whatever they call themselves, right? I want to be like that. It's only because they're looking at the snippets of that person's life. They don't know what that person been through to get there. They don't know what it took for that person, like all of the late nights, the hard work, and all that other stuff to get there. They're seeing the end state. And so that's the key. We're not having the right conversation. If we're not having the conversation, we're allowing their minds to be shaped by everything they see. Want to make sure I address my brother, man. Shout out, Chris, man. Good to see you, man. I hope you're feeling better. Again, like I said, like I told you earlier, man, your presence is definitely missed. Um, Let me see. Michelle said, y'all need to clean them houses. That's what she said. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you're right, Lisa. I got rid of them, so I appreciate that. Um, Let me see. Yeah, everybody loves Chris. You're right, Coach. I don't do social media for that very reason. Yeah, absolutely, Queen V. I know a lot of people. Even our brother was just talking about he goes in and out of social media. He puts himself in social media time out, and I like that concept. So again, I promised you 4. You got 2 tonight, which means we got to give you the other 2 next week. But make sure that you continue to follow us. Again, if this is your first time, go ahead and hit the like button, go ahead and hit subscribe, and go ahead and share it with somebody else again, because I think this conversation so far has been worth its weight in gold. These gentlemen are adding such value. And trust me when I'm telling you, if you think this part is good, it gets better from here. It only gets better from here. So, of course, for me, this is always bittersweet. We're gonna keep it simple tonight. We're just gonna go around clockwise for me. Clockwise for me. So we're just gonna do our final thoughts. We're gonna start off with the unk with the funk, right?
This is me.
We're gonna start off with the unk with the funk, and he is going to give us his final thoughts on the two keys that we talked about so far, not the other two, but the two keys so far to knowing your self-worth. So with that being said, Uncle Junior.
Hey man, I appreciate it. There you go. I knew he was going to eventually get him off. That's why I waited. So I actually, as throughout the show, I wrote down my 4 keys to knowing self-worth based off the conversation that we have having. There was a lot that went on tonight. There were some things that I got cleared up from my understanding. There was some new information that was presented. So as always, Coach, thank you for allowing me to be over here on Friday nights. I really appreciate it. I always get to learn something. I know we always say that we add value and that we learn, but however, this is one night I can say that I really learned some things. But I'll end my final thought with this. 4 keys to knowing your self-worth. I know we're going to get more into it next week. We started on it today, but I'm just going to say here are my 4 things. Is first of all understanding and taking a vested interest in understanding and learning yourself in general. Spend time with yourself. Try to learn more about yourself. Spend time with positive people. Surround yourself. Someone mentioned earlier, I think son of Timothy talked about it earlier about having a wolf pack, being around us, different things. I feel the same way. The feeling is mutual when it comes to all of you gentlemen up here as well. So spend time with positive people. Number 3 is understanding that you're not perfect. So we have to embrace that. And lastly, boundaries. So those are my 4 keys to knowing your self-worth. Just to wrap up my final thoughts.
I'm here. I see. It seemed like it went fast, and I didn't get the introduction that he got. He got a new nickname and everything, and you was like my man on WKRP in Cincinnati, the DJ. But no, 4 keys to knowing your self-worth. I think when it comes to knowing your self-worth, first and foremost, know where you can add value to any and every situation, and don't belittle yourself, even if you don't have the same book knowledge or same street knowledge or same knowledge of whatever said materials may be. You can do your research and your due diligence to elevate your thinking in a way that it adds value to any and all situations. That's where I think we go wrong. We don't elevate ourselves enough, and we're too quick to downplay who we are and what we actually bring to the table. Well, I'm just this. Oh, my little part. I'm just bringing my little piece. No, your little piece means a lot. So when you can uplift yourself even before the conversation or before the encounter, that adds value. And outside of adding that type of value with the knowledge base, have just that knowledge of self and who you are. Because when you're talking about, when we're looking at bringing whatever it is, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a talk or whatever, to someone else, or just information, not just knowing the information, be able to articulate it in a fashion that they can get it. Sure, you can say it, you can tell it to you're blue in the face, but can they understand exactly what you're saying? What you're putting out, will they get it? Because there are variations of communication gaps when it comes to generations. So if we're talking to a younger generations and you talking about, yeah, that's hip, that's cool, and all this other stuff, they aren't going to get it. So be able to walk in any room and not just be a chameleon, but be able to communicate where people can understand you and you can understand those individuals. And that will definitely add value to your self worth.
Whew, these brothers said a lot. This was definitely a great show for me. It was definitely a privilege to be a part of this discussion because there's so much untapped information that I think some of us couldn't get out today because it's full of nuggets, right? It's full of good information. And here's why. Because we live as a people, the only people that I know on the face of this earth that collectively don't have an identity. And so we get drugged to and fro, jumping from here, jumping here, letting anybody influence us, anybody tell us this. See, people who know where they come from, there's some things you can't get them to do because they know that that's not what we do. But do we know what we do? Do we know who we are? Do we know whose we are? And so we have to first be able to come together and study and do some research and bring things to the forefront so that, we can dig into it. And here's the thing. I can't make the decision on who I say we are. You can't make the decision on who we say we are. But can we come together and have these conversations? Because it's not just good enough no more to be Black. Because, and I don't mean to steal from Mr. Kanye, like we brought up earlier, but we aren't the ones defining what Black is or what Black look like. So therefore, it brings down the value. But then that's why I think I started off with knowing that we were brought with a price. Now I have an identity there. Then I can now determine, once I know who I am and who purchased me and why, then I can then I can now be more conscious and cognitive of who I allow to influence my mind, of who I listen to every day, of what I play when I'm laying in the bed, what I'm watching on my phone. I can't just anybody can't just tell me anything, because I understand from the core who I am, where I come from, and what does that look like. So we gotta move forward. We gotta move forward, and we gotta stop trying to do it individually. You can work on yourself individually, but we can't do this thing by ourselves. Even Hearts and Men, got some good brothers on this panel, but even we can't do it by ourselves. So I'm gonna leave it right there. Bless y'all. Love you.
Man, this is probably one of the few times I'm at a loss for words, and I want to show you guys why. This is why I do this. I think it's important that we continue to elevate in our understanding. I think it's important that we seek knowledge and wisdom and understanding. I think it's important that we understand that that fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but knowledge is no good if we just keep it to ourselves and hoard it as though we're trying to store up riches. I appreciate this comment more than I can even express, simply because our goal, when we talked about this in the beginning, is just simply to add value. We want to add value so that we can strengthen our community. We want to add value so that as we get older, and I start sitting on the porches in my shorts and penny loafers and my retired military baseball cap, telling people to get off my lawn, I get to see a generation of young men and women that actually are taking control and taking charge of the neighborhood and taking charge of their surroundings and being pillars of our society. That's what this whole conversation is about. We need to understand, and I can't remember which one of those esteemed brothers said it earlier, but we need to understand not only who we are, but whose we are. We need to understand that he paid the price that no other person could even dream of paying. Not even dream of paying, but they wouldn't have even paid it if they could, simply because of the selfish nature of man. And because of that, we have a responsibility to him to look at our brothers and our sisters, regardless of where they're from or whatever their background is, their education level, their affiliations, or anything of that nature, and realize that they are our brothers and our sisters and do something to lift them up. Not because we want to be praised, but because we praise the one that bought them, that bought us. I think that's important to understand. So again, I want to make sure that I stress again a sincere appreciation, Queen V, for that statement. That really touched me. Thank you. Um, and I want to make sure that I share an appreciation on behalf of myself and all these brothers to everybody who's joined us tonight. You were value added as well. And I pray that this message that we talked about this evening, it was beneficial to you as well. Again, we talk about things on this podcast from the standpoint of awareness. We want to make sure that we're sharing awareness across the platforms. However, be on the lookout for what we call EPMP, not EPMD, EPMP, the Empowering Perspective Membership Program. When that launches, and it will be here soon, that is all about charting the pathway to success. It is a lower version of coaching. You don't get the one-on-one. You can get it later. But with that, being a part of the EPMP, the Empowering Perspective Membership Program, you get the how-to. And I'm telling you, we go in depth with telling you how you can do this. We're not saying that this is the most perfect way, but if you just take part of what we share with you on that, I promise you, you will see some changes. So listen, we appreciate you guys for joining us this evening. Again, we will be back here the same time next week for the second part of the 4 keys to knowing your self-worth. So on behalf of these gentlemen, again, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Have a phenomenal evening and a great rest of your weekend.